Good morning, everybody. Let's get stuck straight in then, shall we? Let's have a look at the dominance chart before we look at anything else, which is basically on the weekly pushing up. So we were hoping, weren't we? We were all hoping that we would see the breakdown at this point, even if it were to just do this, which was the overall expectation. If we were to lose the 21, we would have come down maybe at best to a golden cross retest on exponentials. I'm not saying it can't happen, but at the moment there's no evidence for it, and then at that point move up to major areas on the chart where we might start to see what's known as an alt season, baby. But there's no alt season as of this moment in time. In fact, what I've been saying was that we would like to see an alt rally, and that alt rally would fade into death crosses on dailies and then feed back into Bitcoin, which is obviously at this point now showing on the Bitcoin dominance chart, which is rising a little bit now. You know, golden crosses and all the good stuff that you would expect in a dominant market for Bitcoin. So Bitcoin's having a nice time. The total too, so on the 4 hourlies, it's neither here nor there. Golden crosses, so it does look good generally, I would say, for altcoins if they can hold these areas. And look, I'm not saying that, you know, alts are gonna lose like loads of value or anything like that. They will probably lose sats across the board, but it's a bullish-ish chart on the 4 hourly and on the daily and on the weekly, actually, to be honest with you. We just need to reclaim this area here, the 20 weekly, which brings me nicely. It's a nice little segue to Bitcoin and what Bitcoin's doing here on the weekly. Bitcoin has managed to pierce the box of significance. It is, I suppose, ever so slightly like $1,000 above the 20 weekly, which would put it above all moving averages at this point now. So, I mean, that on its own is something. We want to wait for the candle to close, and again tonight it will close, and we'll see if we can hold this area. It doesn't mean guaranteed at all that it will continue up, but it's better than getting rejected from it. So, you know, we are above it right now. We've got to wait for the weekly to close. Momentum is turning up a little bit now. We can think about this as far as, are we going to get a breakout of price action, breakout of momentum? If we're going to get all of those at the same time, it would point to, believe it or not, new all-time highs for Bitcoin. The only thing that's making me a little skeptical about all of this is moving over to stocks. So the S&P looks like this. This is how it closed. That's a bearish engulfing candle if you've ever seen one. That is exactly what it is. So that does say to me we're looking to maybe see this type of move. You know, I'm not saying it's going to be a carbon copy. It can bounce, it can move up a little bit, it can go down a little bit, but I think revisiting that 20 weekly, the 21 exponential as well, you know, this area down here, 5,280, is probably quite likely over a couple of weeks, 2, 3, 4 weeks or so. And again, that's not a massive move, but it is a trend, a short-term trend pulling back down to these lower areas. Gold also had a bit of a shooting star candle body, so that's not a good look for it either. This does look like it wants to come back down. I'd probably only expect a 2,356, basically a 10 exponential. But if it does come down further, it would still shouldn't really see lower than 2,300 for gold. But you know, by looking at this, it still points further down. So stocks and gold do point further down before any bounce to go back up. So let's think about what that means for Bitcoin. Because again, I alluded to this yesterday, maybe the day before. It's just been something I've been a little concerned of since Friday, because you can see Bitcoin having a nice time and having a great time, moving up, having a great time. Oh yeah, Bitcoin, crypto, loving it. But you know, if the entire market, if all other markets are pulling back, can Bitcoin just rise? You know, can it move against all the other markets? I mean, it can do, and in theory, of course, anything can happen. But is it going to? Now, obviously, I've got a Telegram, and people are, we all talk on the Telegram. People are always talking, and you go on Twitter and you see people talking. And I feel like people have suddenly flipped a bit too bullish, really. And I'm not saying we shouldn't be bullish over a longer period of time, but in the immediate time, I think people have flipped a little bit too bullish for my liking. You know, people are talking about, Trump's talking at the Bitcoin rally, ETF this and XRP that. Everything's bullish. Well, I mean, these things do have bullish implications, but I often find, and I'm sure you do too, especially in hindsight, is that when everybody gets super bullish, they get wrecked. If everybody gets super bearish, they get wrecked. It's normally such a counterintuitive world, the world of trading, and most of the time, the majority are wrong. You could say that maybe there's conspiracies out there, or maybe you could just say, look, it's bots and algos that are taking advantage of the liquidity that pours into the market. People are going long even after we've seen a decent rally over the last couple of weeks. People are going long at these levels. We're up 23.5% for Bitcoin alone. Some of these altcoins are up 30, 40, 50 or more percent. Now people are going long on them. I've been saying that if we get this rally, which we got, 20, 30, 40, 50% is good. And what we'll be looking for is a death cross retest, on a daily. And I think, a good example of that was this. I mean, this is just one of many. This is Dogecoin, really. We are above the death crosses, but, we could easily come down. They're not golden crosses, they're death crosses. SHIB, death cross retest, death cross retest, and again, these are just some of the charts that I had up from yesterday. We spent hours on the Patreon going through them all, and the majority of them look like this. And again, I'm still bullish on these charts long term. I mean, over just looking at this move, we had this giant parabolic move, massive consolidation, breakout from a descending triangle, retest of the support of the triangle, retest of the support of the triangle again. So I would expect that actually the low is probably in over here. But that doesn't mean that this is going to break straight away. We could revisit it. We could even break down. It depends. So much depends. And this is just SHIB. There's a million charts that look like this or similar. But it's the relationship to moving averages here. You can't be bullish on this immediately. And I keep trying to tell people, look, if you want to check your bias, you invert the scale. Now you could say the bottom is in, because what we're seeing is a slow and steady series of higher highs, higher lows with golden crosses that are being retested. This is what you'd expect to see in a bullish chart, and that's where you'd get bullish and go, oh, I'll have a bit of that and I'll go crazy. But no, unfortunately, it's the opposite of that, and these are death crosses. If you're a bear, you short here. If you were me, you exit positions here and wait for brighter days to trade perhaps maybe an uptrend or to maybe buy a double bottom. And this is just, it's just SHIB. It's a non-coin. It's not a great example. It's just because it's here, really. So just check your bias and have a little think, because if you're trading or going long based on what you think people are going to say at conferences or outcomes of court cases or potential ETFs, these are all big fat question marks. And I can tell you now, you watch enough of these speeches and conferences and stuff, people are very good at talking without saying anything. The Fed is a great example. You ever watch a Fed meeting? If you can make your way through it, it's boring as hell. But even like a speech at the end of it, there's lots of words, but there's basically no information. And people sit there and they try and trade those things, which is absolutely mad. It's kind of crazy. It's a gamble, really. And so if everybody's thinking we've got X, Y, and Z bullish incidents which are about to happen over the next week or two, I'm going long in anticipation for someone saying something that's going to have an impact on the price. Not too sure that's the good way to go about it. Look, you can trade that way if that's how you want, but it's not, to me, that's not trading. That is gambling. That is basically like putting a bet down, on football when the penalties begin. Who knows what's going to happen? It's really, the skill and the analysis and the strategies have all been taken away, and really you are just gambling at that point. So I feel like people are getting particularly bullish at resistance, which is why I'm mentioning all of this. We are at resistance on a lot of these charts. Even Bitcoin's at a weekly resistance, ever so slightly above. Total 2 is at resistance on the weekly. Most altcoins are at death crosses, which are, major resistances. So you would expect a big pullback from that. So I am bullish, and I am happy to be bullish over a longer period of time. And I keep trying to reiterate the best way to think about it is the total 2 being in an accumulation phase, which is where I've been buying throughout this area, and I'll continue to buy into this area. I'll even buy lower than this area because this is a bullish chart on the weekly. And my projection is that we are going to find a accumulation breakout at some point this year, and next year we will sort of rally into new all-time highs on the total 2. So longer term spot positions, not immediate gratifying trades. I think those are all done now. This area is it's a reasonable area to accumulate from, but we have rallied. At least, like I say, even Bitcoin's done 25%, altcoins 30 to 50 or more percent from the areas that I suggested the rally would come from over the last couple of weeks, and we've had that now. We are at resistance now. If we break out, then great. But gold, S&P, Nasdaq, indices in general, coming down a little bit. So and I think they're going to come down a little bit more, based on a weekly. It doesn't have to all happen tomorrow. You know, we won't be seeing giant big moves today, tomorrow, wherever. They could happen at any point. We're talking about weekly charts here. Remember, the general projection is based on a weekly, which means you've got to have patience. And if you were to buy now, it's a bit of a gamble, to be honest with you, because you're buying resistances. I always say this: look, resistances break, supports break. You could buy a resistance if you like; it might break. But it is normally the opposite of how you want to go about trading. You kind of really just want to be buying the supports, and if you want to take if you want to take the profit, you sell at the resistance. If you're more optimistic, you could wait to see if the resistance breaks, but you don't really want to buy a resistance. That's kind of the opposite of what you want to do. I mean, that is, I suppose, where people generally go wrong, when they haven't really learned the ins and outs of trading, or the or any indicators whatsoever, and they're just going on feelings, emotions, and tweets and expectations of events that haven't happened yet, which is not really how I would. It's the opposite of me, to be honest with you. It's the absolute opposite of how I go about doing it. Anyway, long story short, it's Sunday. If we're going to see a sell-off today, it would not at all surprise me to kind of match the closure that we saw on traditional markets, which closed with a big bearish engulfing candle. The Sundays do have a habit of doing that, and it's been a nice little weekend. It's not been amazing. It's been okay, and if we're going to get some kind of sell-off to match the closure for like I say, anything from Nasdaq to S&P, we will get it today, and we will hopefully manage to close above that 20 weekly on Bitcoin. But if we fail to do that, it will look a bit more bearish, and it will look like a major resistance, and it will could easily take us down lower, maybe even back down towards 52 to create a new lower low, and it's at that point where we could start the whole thing all over again and go, well, there's your 50 exponential, like it's a golden cross retest on a weekly, opportunity knocks. But right now, you've got to wait for the closure tonight. You've got to have a look at the pre-market on stocks tomorrow. Check the overall environment, because if you want to be immediately bullish, Sunday afternoon into evening, especially into night, is not the time to do it. But look, right now, benefit of the doubt, it's showing signs that we could actually break this resistance. But stocks, commodities have done the opposite. So I'm just trying to put it to you now. Check your bias sometimes. I'm biased for bull long term. And I say even long term, I'm talking like a couple of months from now. I'm sure we'll be higher than this level, or I'd expect us to be higher than this level. I'd be surprised if we weren't in a couple of months, end of summer, fourth quarter. Next year, loving it. But as of today and tomorrow and next week, not quite so sure about that. Right, I'll leave it with you there. Sit back, watch and wait. Don't overtrade. Don't buy resistance. And we'll wait for the next opportunities, because waiting for opportunities is where the money was. And we've made a load of money these last couple of weeks. Let's try and keep hold of that money. Let's not just blow it. You don't have to overtrade. You have to wait for the opportunity to present itself to you. The chart doesn't care about you. The chart's not going to do what you want it to do. The chart will do what it does, and it's your job to play it carefully and see if you can slice some price action out of that. And at the moment, I suppose on most altcoins, I would say that it does look like a rejection is probably more likely than a breakout. Right, thanks for watching. Hope you have a nice day. Take it easy.